This webinar from the Open Group. Today we are talking about IT4IT. We've got a great couple of speakers today. We've got Jim Johnson, who's going to be doing the main presentation from HP, who's being introduced by Christopher Davis. Before I hand over to Chris, I'd just like to go over a few housekeeping issues to keep the event moving forward smoothly. Firstly, with regards to questions, and we would of course encourage you to ask questions. This is one of the objectives of bringing these events to you. If you'd like to ask a question directly to the panel, then the best way to do that is to write your question into the text QA facility. If you do write a question into there, can I ask you to address it to all participants? That way everyone gets to see all the questions that are being submitted. The intention is to answer as many questions under Jim's presentation. This event is being recorded, so if for any reason you have to leave early, or experience any local technical difficulties, I know that sometimes audio can be problematical around the globe, then everyone who's registered for today's event will get an email with an appropriate link where you'll be able to access the recording. Chris, if you can ask you to start today's event.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon. Good morning, good afternoon, good day, everybody. My name is Chris Davis. It's my pleasure to introduce the second in a series of webinars on the IT4IT initiative at the Open Group. Our speaker today is a close colleague, Jim Johnson from HPE, a client enablement architect in the software group at Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and his background is in IT strategic planning and his architecture and software development. In quantitative business analysis and lives in Austin, Texas. I'm speaking to you from Florida on the east coast of the USA. Detect from the accent that I'm not a Florida native. I currently serve the university system here in the College of Business, and it's my secondary role to serve as the chairman of the IT4IT forum in Open Group. So the goal today basically is to act as the chairperson for the Q&A session at the end. So without further ado, it's a pleasure to hand over to our subject matter expert for today, Jim Johnson.
And welcome everyone. As Chris said, the focus of today's talk is around the strategy to portfolio value stream. I hope that most of you were able to attend the earlier webinar that gave a background on IT4IT architecture in general, but we'll do some catch up on that in the event that you weren't there, that you get oriented on where we are and the focus of our conversation. This is a model of the IT value chain that we've developed. It's characterized by value streams across the top flow. These are really the direct functions of the value chain, and they're supported by various supporting functions or indirect functions across the bottom. We think of these main value streams within the chain as characterized by plan, build, deliver, and run. This is a bit of an evolution from the plan, build, run model that we in IT have been using for years to characterize what we do. We think the small change, adding deliver, is a very important aspect because it kind of symbolizes a fundamental change in the way we organize to deliver IT services to our customers, and apparent, I think, as we go through it. That value stream is really the reference architecture, which is characterized by a service model that underlies it and ties it together, and a service model is really the different it's a life cycle of a service as it moves through those value streams, those chains. It's initially a conceptual model, so that it's kind of, I like to think of it as kind of the marketing plan for a service. It's trying to understand why you're offering the service, who your customers are, what's the value of this service to them, and when do you want to offer it to them. So it's really highly conceptual in nature. It's really the beginnings of understanding might cost to operate a service and what the benefits will be. So it really their cost and a benefit read to be undertaking the service or offering it in the first place. Its life cycle, it becomes more, you can be characterized more as logical models. So these are, if you think of the typical models you might do in software development or in project management of a development engagement, their views of the service in terms of actually creating the capabilities that it's needed to operate. And then, as it may be released and actually deployed into a production environment and begin operating, or it may be staged in a service catalog for someone to subscribe to, then it becomes a true physical service that's in the environment, and it becomes available for customers to subscribe to it. So it's the different viewpoints from different personnel, all under the same animal. It's all a service model, but it's a very different set of views of that model. So the tools and models change as it evolves through its life cycle. This is what we call the level 1 diagram of the reference architecture. The value streams are represented along the bottom, so it kind of from strategy to portfolio, requirements to deploy, to fulfill and detect to correct. It's like a very linear model, but it's really a continuous flow, and there's feedback all the way from beginning to end, and that's one of the major features of it, is this interconnectedness throughout the value streams. The blue boxes are the functional components that act on the artifacts, and the artifacts are these black boxes, so they're lifecycle data objects, and tied together through solid lines that represent relationships between the data objects. And the circles along the bottom are a special designation of data object, and that's the service model backbone. So that those conceptual, logical, and realized stages that we talked about are characterized by physical artifacts that are stored in a service model along the way. And strip off the functional components, you get a really nice view of the relationships between all of these key artifacts, and you can trace from beginning to end or end to beginning these relationships by referring back to the service model backbone that runs along the way. And if you think about how difficult it is today in today's operating world to get a CI in operations, be able to understand if there's, say, an issue with it or an incident, even knowing what service might be impacted by that incident, or even more difficult to understand what customers may be impacted. There's just a tremendous amount of work that we do in IT a day to understand those relationships and make them available to us in operations. One of the really great aspects of the reference architecture is it defines out what are the essential artifacts and the relationships that we have in IT that we have to deploy, we have to be able to understand, we have to capture, and we have to substantiate the relationships between them, makes all that really possible. And you can begin to think of all the systems of insight that you might be able to create when you can follow these relationships of your key controlling artifacts through the IT life cycle. So, looking at the value chain again, in order the value streams, very briefly, strategy to portfolio is all focused on planning. So it's about defining the objectives for service and aligning them to the business strategy and various IT roadmaps. About optimizing the portfolio of services that IT offer the business. It being your demand documented and consolidated and prioritized, and then creating and managing the set of requirements that can realize those demands, and that, and it's the right set of investments that IT should be making in any given period to respond to that demand. Requirements to deploy is all about focused on building or seeing and turning the investment decisions into services. And we'll have follow-on webinars that go into detail about requirements to deploy. And request to fulfill is focused on the delivering and making those services available to a consumer, and that's really all about in IT's relationships to its customers through a catalog view that people can order known services with expected deliverables. And the tech to connect is focused on keeping those services running in production, and that's the classic operational services that are familiar to most of us in IT today. Like I said, these are all the chain of combined value streams is all made possible by that reference architecture, ties them all together. Portfolio is thought of as really kind of four major phases or aggregates of activities. The first one, aligning to strategy. So this is where we really focus on aligning what we do, what we operate, what we invest in IT with the business objectives. It's all about aligning to business goals and IT roadmaps so that the investments are optimized in that they come out when the business needs them. The platforms are there at the same time, and you're not duplicating investments where it's not necessary. So key strategies are created and documented, and that they are to be achieved are spelled out here in the strategy component. So the realize the portfolio is really most about understanding the portfolio, how it relates to the connection of financial assets. So our individual portfolio, stocks and bonds, and banking is kind of the analogy we typically use. And so our portfolio services is a similar kind of aspect. We want to we make sure that our risk is managed and that we're investing in a portfolio that actually achieves our IT objectives that support the business objectives, much the same way we want to invest in a portfolio of stocks and bonds that achieves our life objectives. So modeling the relationships between services, business architecture is really a key aspect of being able to make those investments decisions. As we'll talk about later, the focus of IT, we're being into really focus on supplying business needs paramount rather than just running IT. That's the way we've always run it. So the backlog is a major aspect. Demand comes from a lot of different sources, from the business change requests and enhancements. From the business and IT strategic planning, we've got various investment initiatives and policy decisions. And from our production environment, our run side of things, we've got problems and patches and security issues that have to be addressed. And IT itself always has a set of technology modernization and transformation activities that it has to undertake, because the tools of the trade are constantly moving underneath us. They're constantly changing, and IT organizations have to keep up with it. Investments on really deciding which of all these demands we really want to address at any given point in time. The number of demands in the backlog, there's no way you can do them all, and so you have to have some way to discriminate between them. There's a lot of constraining factors on it. Obviously, there's budget. There's the amount of risk that the organization is ready to take on, and that risk threshold changes with organizations depending on where they are in the calendar or where they might be in their business cycle. The backlog to be evaluated with respect to what new value would be lost by not doing something. So it's not just a question of where it's worth it. What's the opportunity cost for not doing things that have to be considered. And then resources are a constant constraint. So the availability of really scarce resources like technology expertise and domain specialists. So in all that, IT has to make a choice, and those investments that rise to the top then become proposals that can be acted on by the requirements to deploy stream. It's to think about what activities by looking at comparing it to kind of our changing economic model. Analogy that is often used is that IT is rooted in the past in operating in a kind of a planned economy where we ran things based on a big central plan, and we decided how much capacity we're going to allocate for a given application or service, and when and where it's going to be offered, and we go execute that plan. And if business moves in a different direction and there's more customers in a given place than we had planned, then we have the economic something similar to bread lines, where the commodity that is wanted, we don't have enough of it, or we may have something similar to a lot of cars being built and sitting on the lot that nobody buys because there's not gasoline. It's the plan is everything. Well, the ability or IT operating in that manner is quickly going away. We want to move to more kind of the analogy of a market economy, where we're delivering what market wants when the market wants it. And so the way we did things in the past, and say in strategy, where we'd have a bigger plan, where we have maybe quarterly reviews, but we would build a cost model from top to bottom and say, here's our plan, and we go forward, and very only can make changes to it. What we'll be doing in the future, and what we think that IT4IT enables, is the ability to really collapse that plan cycle into shorter aspects. So maybe quarterly rolling planning cycles with a weekly CEO review. I mean, it has to be really quickly adaptive. The decisions are made based on the impact of the business instead of back to the cost, right? So we want to really get the business stakeholders involved and react quickly, so that our model is more like a marketing plan where we understand what customers want and we adapt it really quickly. As a portfolio today, mostly the decisions are made based on what do we have to do to support core business, and what kind of resources do we have to get things done. And in the future, we really need to cater to the business needs, and we're going to have to be organized in much more agile teams with certified through sources instead of just everything we can build, and flexible skills. Today, so much is done based on what we have to do. Often, when you do your budget and your plan, you're usually 70 or 80% of your budget are devoted to keeping the lights on what you're currently doing. What you have left over is something you might try to do situations with. This is really on business process efficiency, and in operationally, it's such on stability, almost a view that change is evil, and so changes in the next quarter or at least until after Christmas or all the kinds of policies that you're used to seeing. What we want to get is really have innovation be the thing, and it be the center of our prioritization, where we're real flexible, and we sorting an outside service where it makes, and IT being really the broker of those services, as much as they want to be a developer or an operator. And the moves to managing the risk and security of these services rather than the day aspects of it. And again, customer impact, loyalty, revenue, those things that impact the customer should be one of the driving prioritization factors. Managing the investment, today really have very little ability to actually look and see if the investments we made are actually realizing the benefits that we wanted. Our election for this is really it's a spreadsheet-driven world in a lot of cases, where you roll up information from department to department and put it together. Going forward, we really want to be driven by top-down goals. So, at investment portfolio, and what fits do we want to realize? How are we doing? Are we on track? Are the goals the same as they were when we launched this service? And we can only do that really by having a set of KPIs tied in at a service and back coming in on that service on kind of a real-time basis. It goes beyond feedback or the KPIs that we think of today in the opera, like really want to know that we're meeting our level of agreements, or that our performance objectives are being met on a service. But we also want to know, is our benefit there? Is our customers adopting it at the rate we thought? Are they paying for it what we thought they would pay for? Are they substituting some other service instead of our service? So it's really a mark-based view of how our investments are operating to help decide what we invest in the future. again, reference architecture view, and as we said, strategy portfolio is really this first column. It's smallest stream in terms of how many functional components and data artifact it manages. And so put it in a little bit closer in the enterprise architecture component. This really create the service architecture and relate it to the dimensions of the enterprise. Like I said, the business architecture, the technology and information architecture, and those roadmap plans. This architecture is the essential data object. It includes blueprints for the service, enterprise guiding principles that apply, and technology roadmaps that would impact this service. The service portfolio component manages the entire portfolio of services that in plan or in production or in transition, or maybe have even been retired. So it's the authoritative source of the services that IT even knows about. So either they deliver it, or they broker it, or they have in the past, or it's going to be offered in the future. It's the complete picture from a service standpoint, and its key data objects are the conceptual service and the conceptual service blueprint. And we talked about what the actual service means and the information that's contained in it. So the point component is where we log and maintain and evaluate all demand. It's really the single funnel where we get you to all that demand. So this could include like project ideation, service requests, management, incident management, improvement, the sources from all over the organization. And the idea is to funnel them into this one function where we can have them together in a single view. The portfolio backlog item is the key data object that it manages. And as you would expect, that represents what demand entails, who's asking for it, when they want it, why they want it. It manages the creation and the review and the approval and audit of IT policies. Data artifact is a central repository for storing and organizing of IT policies. So things like policy distribution and acceptance, accept processing, revision, regulatory and security compliance rules, review periods, all those kinds of activities happen within the policy functional component. And the proposal component is really, again, it's the authoritative source for the list of IT proposals. These proposals may or may not result in scope agreements that lead to ITIVs that actually get acted on. An agreement it spells out the objective of this proposal. Think what are the cost of it, what's the benefit, what are the key attributes of a proposal, when do we need it, who's going to deliver it or who might deliver it. It's all about the goals for a IT service project. This is architecture, so this is a a little bit deeper dive into those functional components and their data artifacts, and includes the relationship of those artifacts to its surrounding world. So the kind of grayed out are either functional components from an aging value stream, like requirement to deploy or detect to correct, or supporting functional components. So there's cost modeling, asset management. And at this level, you see some more details about the data relationships and the information flow from functional components. See cardinality between these key relationships, and you get a sense then of how one conceptual service made to multiple service blueprints, how policies relate to conceptual services and requirements, and it's this relationship, this core relationship that I've talked about before is so important in being able to see end-to-end across the chain. What are the benefits to IT and to the business of structuring strategy to portfolio and the way we operate IT? We've summarized them here and about them before. So extent this whole and across MO, your cloud, your enterprise architecture, and your service portfolio, being able to align to business priorities. So enhancing the business agility and speed that you can deliver innovation into the business is really big drivers. Consistency and just visibility of the data. Just think how many places you have demand captured somewhere today in some form, or many places you have proposed ideas, policies are so we use to store policies or to evaluate policies are today with very few standards. Financial visibility, like we said, we want to be able to real-time feedback on how our services are performing versus how they're expected to perform, and what is their real-world impact to the business. So how are they contributing to business objectives and goals? Is core to this whole thing. So those artifacts being traced across their life cycle, and communication between forces of operations in IT, between operational groups, between IT and its business partners. It can on a different when you've got all the other things, when you've got traceability, when you've got visibility, when you've got consistent data you share, when you've got holistic views, your communication with all the stakeholders becomes much more efficient, much more effective, and very much more satisfying, I think, to everyone. That's probably the word I was looking for. So we've had some critical success factors and performance indicators for strategy to portfolio. In portfolio rationalization, to succeed at that, we've lined out some CIs that need to be tracked and followed. Be around got a formal service portfolio function, and you've got a process the taxonomies for understanding the full and technical redundancy and business value of a service. That process is for consistently evaluating and portfolio entries. That you do ongoing rationalization. Your service and IT portfolio management are themselves rationalized. Portfolio financial analysis, account records are produced and on a regular basis. The investment and spend in each of these is monitored. These are just detailed things you can measure to see are from a maturity standpoint on each of these critical factors. Service portfolio reporting analysis. Your service portfolio needs to exist, and is for deciding which services are offered. Investment tracking. The investment is quantified in service portfolio and it's on a prescribed cadence. To improve customer satisfaction, all right, are you measuring it? These very simple things that we want us on and just begin to up our maturity in all of these levels. Critical success factors for stewardship of IT. As you see often are OpEx, software license percentage in use. Some that you don't see very much are planned versus actual cost. Actually, roll up all the cost to a service is probably something that not done on a regular basis, and certainly not across the entire portfolio of services. And I mean, what is the cost to a customer is almost impossible to measure today for a lot of what we do. Security, obviously, very important factor. So, what's the security assessments, and what are the deficiencies in security standards? Simple KPIs, but them and yourself, and just see where you stand on this, and it can help you decide where to really get started on thinking, structuring your planning activities in alignment with the IT4IT architecture. In addition, the open group, we've got a standard published out there, and you can go download a document that goes into more detail about all these functions and strategy to portfolio, and I encourage you to do so. And Chris, I think I'll open up for questions at this time.
Thank you, Jim. And thank you all for the questions that have come in. What I propose to do is to allow Jim a moment or two to get his breath back and just rearticulate exactly what you've just seen, and go back towards the beginning of the deck and take the questions in a kind of a chronological order based on Jim's presentation. So Jim has introduced you to the first and arguably the thinnest of 4 value streams that we use to conceptualize the IT4IT initiative. Also be aware, please, that value stream orientation is a very, very high-level view. What Jim has attempted to do in a very splendid presentation is to zoom you from the sort of helicopter view that we would use to pitch to demonstrate value to a CIO or another member of the C-suite in an organization. The main and value streams are business orientations that they rapidly lock onto. Driven it down through the 5 levels of abstraction that we use. The reference architecture that you've seen him illustrate in the slides is roughly level 3. by putting through the functional component level, through the data artifacts, we get into the data integrity required to maintain the CMDB, to provide consistency in the data models in products, services that vendors like HPE, ServiceNow, CA, BMC, and so on all offer to bring this reference architecture into operation. So not so much a health warning, but some perspective so that you understand that Jim has spoken merely of one of the four value streams that we use in IT for IT. If I may, what I would like to do is to go back to the beginning. So in slide 2, is there any similarity in the plan, the run, monitor model of COBIT to what we've done in IT for IT? Absolutely, Salman. The idea is that the reference architecture that we've architected in this new open group standard through the process of abstraction can accommodate S model through the reference architecture. So the purple line running through the slide that you see now is a little bit deceptive, A, because of its newness, and B, because of its richness. This will work in an environment where we are reliant on more traditional structured methods, or in an organization that uses DevOps and more agile techniques. So we don't have an explicit process model in there. So this thing is very flexible. And what we've done with Porter's value chain is essentially flipped it on a horizontal axis to that sort of margin. So values that are added are efficiency in the business of IT, as you've heard Jim explain, and agility. Okay, the second question is us on, I think, to around slide. I'm pages here, folks, so do please forgive me.
I'll try to keep up with you on the.
Good.
On the
yeah, I think to move directly. We actually got into the phases and activities of strategy to portfolio. So the next series of questions were posed around slide number. Let me don't have numbers printed on my page. Boxes: align strategy, rationalize portfolio, prioritize backlog.
There we go.
Super. Thank you, Jim. So the question was posed. More demand, specifically, could you give us a little bit more on aging demand, Jim? Specifically, what steps could be taken to consolidate and prioritize in that prioritize backlog box, third from the left? Can I come back to you?
Yeah, so I think key message is a single view to the entire backlog. Demand is, like I said, that you've got service requests, you've got project proposals, you've got IT initiatives, you've got architecture changes, and they come together once every plan cycle to a large degree, and they're looked at their condition until that time. So the idea is to have a view to all of those all the time in almost real time, and able to associate those with the services that they impact or that depend on them, and be able to service then back to the business drivers that you're trying to satisfy for the business, in order to allow you to, on an ongoing basis, understand, what goals are the customers asking you about, and where they align to, and is there momentum building in any specific service versus another, so that you can continually dial on where you're making your investments and where you're focusing.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim. So, Dave, I hope that answers your question. Another question was raised by Iyad Hindi, who asked whether or not enterprise architecture should be involved in the strategy to portfolio phases earlier. And I'll respond to that by reminding you all that this is a reference architecture. So what we provide is prescriptive, but not entirely fixed. So the huge benefit, which Jim has begun to articulate, is the flexibility and transparency of the insights that this provides. So folks from Westbury Software working with us to provide the monitoring of KPIs, continuous improvement, and so on. So that's ongoing work for us. But remember that the emphasis here is on a reference architecture, something that has not existed before. This enables us to enable IT to be run like a business. So provided for us by Gartner estimates that in a $1 billion IT operation, that a cost improvement, a cost reduction of between 5 and 20% should be feasible. And the reason is because of the dynamism of this space. So virtualization, serial orientation, which is becoming more and more endemic in the service management space, both from a technology provider point of view and also the expectations of internal customers, make this a very key place that we ourselves agile. That's what the reference architecture enables.
If I could just expand on that a little bit, a lot of these visuals imply a process, and when we see an arrow pointing, left to right, we are trained to see a process and a flow of things. And the point, remember, is we're talking about processes here. And so if you were to take your strategy portfolio organization and build a process model, you would probably see from enterprise architecture involved front in your process model, but it's not the way it's depicted here.
And so all it's prescriptive guidance, doesn't actually regiment roles, responsibilities, and positions in the organization. So let's clarify that. Several questions have arisen on the mapping to ITIL. We see this initiative as highly complementary to ITIL. This is the first time that there has been an, if you will, off-the-shelf, ready-to-use set of prescriptive guidelines that be brought into the business of IT. See this as replacing ITIL. This is highly complementary. They're driven by enterprise architects working in this space and is a TOGAF-driven initiative within the Open Group. So we have used TOGAF to drive the whole of our endeavor in building IT4IT reference architecture. I wouldn't argue that we map to TOGAF. TOGAF is just framework. There's a reference architecture for the business of IT. Is very complementary to ITIL. I wrote an appendix for the pocket guide for the IT initiative, compare and contrasts IT4IT. So there are a number of similarities, but there are also some significant differences. So this is much more prescriptive and of use to customer and vendor organizations. So that's responded to most of the questions there. There are a few more that are just coming in on the screen, but I'm going to ask you to step forward briefly, if I may, to the slide where you've got the strategy to portfolio level 2, the one you get down into the functional components for. That's fun. Again, there's now a more detailed view that demonstrates, if you will, the richness of the different levels of what is we would call functional decomposition. So we're pushing down through level 3 of 5 in IT4IT lateral towards the levels where the CMDB would exist and product and service specific specifications need to be made in order to maintain the integrity of the data. It is all about the data. Where that this detailed view complements very much the very high level, more helicopter view we give with the value chain and the value streams. One that's just popped in, I didn't have time to note and type a response to, is what are the use cases of the IT4IT reference architecture? At the moment, the best response to that is Mary Jarrett's wonderful presentation from the Edinburgh meeting a few weeks ago, when she highlights how IT4IT has been introduced worldwide across very complex operations in exploration, oil extraction, retail operations, financial services, and so on and so forth. We have uses from organizations like Delta Lloyd, Accenture, and various others, which we share through the open group meetings. So those will be consumed, and we hope to build those more directly into the standard itself so as to articulate the opportunities to apply the reference architecture. Where we can pick up a copy of this presentation, Jim has kindly prepared all this in a PDF format for you, which Simon will make available as we close the conversation. Hugh's IT4IT is nicely evolving into the reference architecture of an ERP for IT, in practices for modern IT. Is a companion open source community attempting to create an instance of an ERP based on IT4IT. We're with it. This is the open group. So the purpose of sharing all this in this webinar is to encourage and maintain the integrity of contributions from matter experts like yourselves. That primarily comes through involvement with the open group. Some 60 companies in the forum. We have 7 major software vendors. Altogether about 250 enterprise architects, all of whom are senior subject matter experts like our speaker, Jim Johnson. And we estimate that 70 to 25 man-years of effort has gone to the material that you've seen outlined, specifically in relation to this one value stream this morning. And at the moment, we are at the point of having the new standard downloaded around about 2,000 times. So there's obviously a great deal of interest in this, because there's now the potential to spread the key and the ability to contribute to this initiative. So it responds to the question about how getting in are contributors of this initiative working maturity model that would help IT departments to adopt this approach regarding the assets that they're managing. Centralized assets like cloud and big data. The answer to that, Frederick, is absolutely yes. My colleague Fulton and Eric Vitter lead our adoption work group, and one of their efforts is to let the maturity of both users, professional users of the IT4IT materials, so people certification and the continuing professional development of people, but we will also be looking at CMMI and trying to create some equivalents of that so as certify organizations, and obviously we'll be certifying the products that conform to the IT4IT standard. Okay, I'm not entirely sure I respond to. Alan Baldo asks, could we please elaborate a bit on how the automation aspects that could be applied to this subject? You speak to that, Jim, a little bit in the context of what we call systems of insight.
Yeah, it's one of the most exciting aspects of this is you think about automation as we use today, say in operations management, where we made a lot of progress in automating the process of understanding incidents, categorizing them, and even incidents before the customer does, and adjusting to them. You can begin where with the end-to-end data and relationships that are exposed through the reference architecture. You could vision an implementation where you have that kind of automatic monitoring in almost any of the processes that move your artifacts through the value chain or through their life cycle. And so where automation could be most important, you could certainly envision that happening. And that's one of the fundamental abilities that I think the issue of this standard set of artifacts and relationships exposes.
Excellent, Jim. And without whizzing back to it, the third or fourth slide in that Jim spoke to, where we talk about the conceptual service model, the logical service model, and the realized service model. The service model backbone, which sits at the heart of a reference architecture, the portions are these systems of insight and the notion to continuously monitor, maintain visibility of costs is one of the and forgive me, I'm getting text messages coming back and forth at the moment. So I will close as chair and thank Jim Johnson once again for a very, very enlightening presentation, and thank you all for attending or illuminating questions. Jim and I will summarize those and make them, our responses, and the deck that Jim has presented to you available. And without further ado, I'll hand back to Simon.
Thank you, Jim. Most appreciate your time. Just to reiterate, I'm happy to act as the go-between to send out Jim's slides. So everyone will have a copy of my email address. So feel free to send me an email requesting the slides, and I'll make sure you get those. So once again, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Chris. And I'll bring today's event to a halt. Thank you very much.